My name is Kathleen Hale. I'm 34 years old, married to my boyfriend turned husband, Daniel Hale, who's 36, and we have 3 children together, Avery, who's 8, Caleb, 6, and Molly, 4. They're the kind of kids who fill a room without trying. Avery talks with her hands and asks questions that make adults uncomfortable. Caleb moves like he's powered by a motor that never shuts off. Molly still believes the world is mostly kind and that hugs fix almost everything. And until recently, I thought our family loved them exactly the way they were. I was wrong. My younger sister Rachel and I were never close, but we were functional. We grew up sharing a house, holidays, and a quiet understanding that I was the difficult one and she was the easy one. I pushed back, she complied. Our parents adored that about her. Rachel was the baby, the peacemaker, the one whose mistakes were brushed off with, "She didn't mean it like that." I was expected to be patient, forgiving, the bigger person. That dynamic followed us into adulthood, but things truly shifted 3 years ago, right after Rachel married Mark. Mark came from what he liked to call a structured family. He said it the way some people say elite. From the beginning, he watched my children the way people watch unruly pets, smiling on the surface, calculating underneath. At first, the comments were subtle enough that I could pretend I was imagining them. Avery was a bit dramatic. Caleb needed more discipline. Molly was too attached to me. I told myself Rachel was just adjusting to marriage, that Mark's opinions weren't hers, that I was being oversensitive. But the comments didn't stop. They multiplied. At Thanksgiving, Mark corrected Caleb's table manners in front of everyone. At Christmas, he praised Rachel's kids for sitting quietly while Avery excitedly described a book she loved. During Easter dinner, when Caleb spilled juice on his shirt, Mark chuckled and said, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "This is why kids need firmer guidance." No one defended us. Not my parents, not Rachel. And I noticed something else. Rachel had stopped defending us too. She'd started nodding along. The final straw came a month later. Rachel's daughter Ella was turning 7, and Rachel had been planning the party for weeks. Bounce house, character performer, personalized cake, the kind of party kids circle on calendars. My kids were ecstatic. Avery made a list of gift ideas. Caleb practiced a magic trick he wanted to show his cousin. Molly insisted on wrapping her present herself, even though it took 3 tries and a lot of tape. Then, 2 days before the party, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Your kids can watch the party on the live stream." I stared at the screen, convinced I'd misread it. I called her immediately. "What do you mean, watch the party?" There was a pause, long enough to make my stomach drop. "Well, Rachel thinks it might be better if your kids don't come this year." I felt my chest tighten. Why? "She's worried they might be too much for Ella's special day." Too much. 4 words that erased years of family history in an instant. I hung up and called Rachel. Her reply came quickly, almost rehearsed. "There's no misunderstanding," she said calmly. "Your kids have a negative influence on mine. I want Ella's birthday to be perfect." Negative influence. I repeated the words back to her, trying to understand how anyone could say that about children who still needed help tying their shoes. "They're kids, Rachel." "Not in our house," she replied. "Mark and I have higher standards." Higher standards. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot and cried. Not because of what she said, but because I knew what came next. I had to tell my children they weren't wanted. That night, Avery asked why we weren't going to Ella's party. "But we're family," Caleb said, brow furrowed. Molly just asked if she could still give Ella her present. Daniel was furious when I told him. "This is cruel," he said. "Who excludes children from a family party?" "The kind of people who think our kids are a problem," I replied bitterly. I expected to feel defeated. Instead, something in me hardened. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to argue. And I wasn't going to let my children believe there was something wrong with them. Daniel looked at me and said quietly, "Then let's give them a day they'll never forget." And that's when the idea hit me. Disneyland. We talked about it for months, but never committed. Suddenly, the timing felt intentional, like the universe handing me a choice. I didn't tell my family our plans. I just replied in the group chat, "Thanks, but we have other family plans that day." Rachel asked, "What plans?" I didn't answer. For the first time in my life, I chose my children over keeping the peace. And I had no idea how much that choice was about to change everything. The week leading up to the party was harder than I expected. Even with Disneyland on the horizon, my kids were still grieving something they didn't quite have the words for. Avery stopped talking about the party altogether, which somehow hurt more than if she'd complained. Caleb asked once, just once, if maybe Aunt Rachel had changed her mind. Molly kept bringing me Ella's present, asking when we'd give it to her. Each time, it felt like a small cut, so I threw myself into planning. If my children were going to miss out on being included, then I was going to make sure they never felt unwanted. Daniel and I stayed up late every night with laptops open, mapping out routes through the park, booking character dining, and arguing playfully over which rides to hit first. I bought matching family shirts. I bought Disney pajamas for the night before. I even let the kids pack their own small backpacks, which resulted in some questionable choices. "Why are you bringing 3 stuffed animals?" I asked Molly. "In case they get scared," she said solemnly. Fair enough. The night before our trip, I posted a single photo on Instagram. The kids in their new pajamas, brushing their teeth, Mickey ears hanging on the wall behind them. Caption: "Early bedtime tonight, big day tomorrow." I didn't tag the location. I didn't explain, but anyone who knew us could guess. Saturday morning, we left at 6 a.m. The kids were buzzing with excitement, the kind that fills a car with noise and anticipation. When the Disneyland gates came into view, Avery actually gasped. Caleb bounced in his seat like he might launch through the roof. Molly clapped her hands and shouted, "Castle!" And just like that, the hurt faded, at least for them. We rode everything. Pirates. It's a Small World. The teacups, twice. We ate churros for breakfast because vacation rules. The kids met characters and hugged them like old friends. Avery curtsied for Belle. Caleb screamed with joy on Space Mountain. Molly refused to let go of Tinkerbell's hand. I started posting photos, not out of spite at first, but because I was genuinely happy. And then my phone started buzzing. Likes, comments, messages. "Your kids look so happy. This is what childhood should look like. Best parents ever." Then I noticed something else. Rachel had watched every single story, more than once. So had my mother, my aunt. A few cousins I knew were at the party. Daniel caught me checking my phone and grinned. "She's watching, isn't she? She's watched everything. Twice." "Good," he said. "Let her." Around noon, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked the family group chat. Photos from the party were starting to appear. The bounce house, the cake, Ella in her dress. But something felt off. The smiles looked forced. The kids looked distracted. Then a message from my Aunt Claire popped up. "The kids keep asking where Avery, Caleb, and Molly are." My mom replied quickly. "They're having their own family day." That's when the comments started. "But it's Ella's birthday," someone wrote. "It feels weird without all the cousins," another added. I could practically feel Rachel's control slipping through the screen. At 2:07 p.m., my phone rang. It was my mom. "Where are you?" she demanded. "At Disneyland," I said calmly. There was silence. "But the party is being live streamed." "Oh," I replied sweetly. "Perfect. The kids can watch from here." She hung up. 20 minutes later, Rachel called. "How could you do this without telling us?" she snapped. "The same way you excluded my kids without telling them," I replied. "That's different." "How?" "Our kids are asking why they can't go to Disneyland too." And there it was, the real problem. "Well," I said lightly, "they can watch on the live stream." She exploded. "This is ruining Ella's birthday." I almost laughed. Messages started flooding in. "Can you please come get the kids? They won't stop crying about Disneyland. We'll pay for tickets. This is causing drama." I responded once. Maybe they should have been included from the beginning. The silence that followed felt heavy. We spent the rest of the day watching the parade, riding Space Mountain again, and ending the night with fireworks. Avery leaned against me and whispered, "This is better than any party." And I knew then, whatever fallout came next, I'd made the right choice. By mid-afternoon, Disneyland felt like a dream, the kind you don't want to wake up from. The kids were sticky with sugar and happiness. Avery had her autograph book clutched to her chest like a treasure map. Caleb insisted on piloting the Millennium Falcon twice because the first time didn't count. Molly fell asleep in Daniel's arms after spinning herself dizzy on the teacups. I should have been fully present, but my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first I ignored it. I told myself I'd deal with the fallout later. Today was about my children, about showing them that rejection didn't get the final say in their happiness. Then a message slipped through that I couldn't ignore. From my cousin Jenna, who was at the party. "Kathleen, it's kind of a mess here." I stepped aside while Daniel waited in line with the kids. "What kind of mess?" I typed. Her reply came quickly. "Ella's been crying on and off for hours. Every time someone tries to distract her, she asks why her cousins aren't here and why they're at Disneyland instead." My stomach twisted, not with guilt, but with grim recognition. This was never going to stay contained. Jenna continued. "Other kids keep asking their parents why they can't go to Disneyland too. A few families already left early." I exhaled slowly. I hadn't wanted this. Not for Ella, not for any of the kids. But I also wasn't willing to pretend this outcome came out of nowhere. Rachel created this situation. At 4:12 p.m., my phone rang again. "Rachel." I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text appeared. "Please call me. The kids won't calm down." Then another. "Mark is furious. Mom is upset. This is spiraling." Daniel glanced at me. "You okay?" "They're unraveling," I said quietly. He nodded once. That was always going to happen. I finally answered when my father called. "Your sister's kids are having meltdowns," he said without greeting. "Can you please just come get them?" I almost laughed. "Dad," I said evenly, "Rachel told me my kids were a negative influence. Why would she want them around now?" "That's different." "No," I replied. "It's not." He sighed. "You're being petty." "I'm being consistent." That word seemed to short-circuit him. He hung up. The messages kept coming from my mom. "This is causing so much drama." From Rachel. "You're ruining Ella's birthday." From Mark. "This behavior is extremely inappropriate." I didn't respond. Then came the photos. Rachel, or someone close to her, started posting them in the family chat. Ella crying, Ryan pouting, kids clustered around a phone pointing at our Instagram stories. The bounce house, empty. Cake, untouched. The perfect party unraveling frame by frame. I stared at one photo longer than the others. Ella, sitting on the grass, party hat crooked, cheeks streaked with tears. And still, I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. Because the problem wasn't Disneyland. The problem was exclusion. At 5:30 p.m., Rachel called again. This time her voice was different, raw, desperate. "Please," she said, "just come get the kids. We'll pay for everything. Tickets, food, hotel, whatever you want." I closed my eyes. "Rachel," I said slowly, "your words, not mine. You said my kids had a negative impact on yours. I don't want to risk ruining our trip." She inhaled sharply. "You're using my words against me." "Yes," I said, "because now you understand them." She hung up. The group chat exploded. "Mom, that was cruel." "Dad, this isn't like you." "Mark, you're weaponizing a misunderstanding," I finally typed. When my children were excluded, I was told to accept it. "I'm just asking for the same understanding now." No one replied. We watched the fireworks that night, colors bursting across the sky while Molly slept curled against my shoulder. Avery whispered, "Mom?" "Yes, baby." "Are we bad kids?" My heart shattered. "No," I said immediately. "You are wonderful. Always." Caleb nodded solemnly, like he'd been waiting to hear it. Back at the hotel, I posted one last video. The kids talking about their favorite parts of the day. Unscripted, messy, joyful. Caption: Sometimes the best memories are the ones you make when you choose your people. Within minutes, messages started rolling in, not from Rachel, but from everyone else. Aunt Claire, I'm so sorry. Your kids should never have been excluded. Uncle Rob, seeing their faces today made everything painfully clear. Jenna, the party felt empty without them. Even my mom sent a message later that night. I've been thinking a lot today. I don't think we handled this right. That one stayed unread for a long time. Because for the first time, I wasn't rushing to smooth things over. I wasn't trying to fix a mess I didn't make. I lay in bed, listening to my children breathe, exhausted and happy, and realized something important. This wasn't revenge. This was boundaries, finally enforced. And boundaries always feel cruel to the people who benefited from you having none. Sunday morning was quiet, too quiet. The kids slept in, exhausted from a full day of joy. Daniel took them down to the hotel pool while I stayed back, scrolling through the messages I'd ignored the night before. There were dozens. Most of them were from Rachel. The progression was obvious, anger giving way to panic, then finally that looked a lot like regret. This is your fault. Please call me. Ella hasn't stopped crying. I shouldn't have said what I said. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the hotel door. When I opened it, my parents stood in the hallway. We drove down early, my mother said softly. We need to talk. They came in and sat at the small table by the window. Daniel took one look at my face and quietly ushered the kids back to the pool. My father cleared his throat. What you did yesterday hurt a lot of people. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I took my children on a family trip, I said, after they were told they didn't belong. My mother flinched. You knew it would upset Ella, she said. The same way Rachel knew excluding my kids would upset them, I replied. The difference is, no one cared when it was my children crying. Silence. For years, I continued, you've asked me to be understanding, to keep the peace, to let things go. Yesterday was the first time I didn't. My father looked away. We didn't realize how much it would hurt them, my mother whispered. That's because you weren't the one explaining it to a 4-year-old, I said. You weren't the one watching your children wonder what was wrong with them. They left without a resolution, but for the first time, I could see the shift. The excuses were gone. The pattern was exposed. When we got home Sunday night, the house felt calm, safe. Monday morning, Rachel showed up at my door. She looked exhausted, deflated. I owe you an apology, she said immediately. For what? I asked. For calling your kids bad influences. For excluding them. For thinking perfection mattered more than people. She told me everything. How the party had fallen apart. How other parents questioned her decisions. How Ella asked why her cousins weren't there and said the party felt empty without them. I watched your stories, Rachel admitted, over and over. Your kids looked free, happy. Mine were miserable. I listened. I didn't interrupt. What do you want from me? I finally asked. Forgiveness, she said, eventually, and a chance to do better. I didn't agree right away. I need change, I told her. Not just apologies because the consequences finally affected you. She nodded. And to her credit, she followed through. Over the next few weeks, I watched carefully. She defended my kids when Mark slipped into old habits. She invited them over without conditions. When Caleb spilled a drink, she laughed and grabbed paper towels instead of lecturing. When Molly melted down in a store, Rachel knelt and spoke to her gently. The biggest test came at Ryan's birthday. All the cousins are invited, Rachel said firmly. It won't be the same without them. And she meant it. The party wasn't perfect. Caleb got loud. Molly got overwhelmed. Avery talked too much. No one commented. Afterward, Rachel pulled me aside. Thank you for not giving up on us, she said. We're family, I replied. But family doesn't mean accepting harm. 6 weeks later, we all went to Disneyland together. Both families, grandparents included. It was chaotic, loud, exhausting, and wonderful. At one point, Molly got cranky in line, and Rachel picked her up without hesitation. Big days can be hard, she whispered. That moment, told me everything. I learned something through all of this. Standing up for your children isn't revenge, it's responsibility. Sometimes the only way people understand the damage they've caused is by finally feeling the weight of it themselves. And sometimes choosing your children, loud, imperfect, joyful children, creates the kind of change silence never could.